I'm Dana Moriello, and you're listening to This Is a Thing, the podcast where I interview entrepreneurs who started unusual businesses and found success on their own terms. We talk about how they got their wild ideas, how they decided to act on them, and how those ideas have grown. Today, we're talking to Richard Worsham, founder of Janus Motorcycles. Richard's wild idea was to create a hand-built, classically styled, lightweight motorcycle inspired by the bikes of the 1920s and 30s, and to make those bikes in small-town Indiana with a network of Amish craftsmen, local RV suppliers, and other domestic partners. The motorcycle market is dominated by bikes that are heavy and fast, and Richard's are unapologetically neither. And manufacturing something domestically, that's an expensive and complex task, especially for a first-time founder who had just graduated with a master's degree in architecture. Here's how Richard made it happen, and along the way, how he built an incredibly passionate community of riders and created his better-than-his-dreams job. Enjoy. Start by telling me about the very first time that you were on a motorcycle and how that felt.
My background was not in bikes as a kid. A lot of our riders, a lot of our customers, a lot of our employees, they barely could walk and they were riding a little dirt bike or something like that. Their family maybe rode. That was not the case with me. I had a bicycle. I crashed a bicycle. I forgot how to ride a bicycle, which they say isn't impossible, but it took me a year to get back on it after I hit a light post when I was like 5. But the first time I got on a motorized two-wheel vehicle was a old moped. And so just to set that stage, a moped are these vintage 50s through 70s really were their heyday. 50cc, they have pedals and a little tiny small two-stroke motor. And some guys, they were going through an old barn, they found one and fixed it up and let me ride it, and I crashed it. And, skinned my knee or whatever. And then years later, I just fell in love with these small mopeds and the idea of it was something that was small enough that I could wrap my head around it. And for me, what got me interested was the idea of riding with other people.
How old were you at the time when you got on that first bike?
Oh, the first one probably 10 or something like that. But I didn't really it didn't catch. It took me when I was in college, I would say, and that's when I started riding.
So that brought you to Notre Dame, and I understand when you were there, you got really deeply involved in the moped community. Tell us about that.
I bought a vintage moped, and that was going to be my means of transportation. I, of course, was not aware of the weather in South Bend, Indiana, and the lake effect. But I came out here, and that was my first kind of scholastic activity I did was riding it out to a local moped shop that I had done some research on in advance. And they were a member of something called the Moped Army, which is a national sort of loose organization with different chapters, which kind of jokingly they call gangs. And there was one here in Elkhart, so about 15 miles, 20 miles from Notre Dame. And I rode my bike out there and made friends with the shop owner and the people that rode together. Wednesday nights, we would all wrench on the bikes, get them running right, and then go on a ride, and then go get dinner or something like that, and hang out, and then go home. But the idea was, again, to ride together and wrench together. That was what fascinated me.
I understand that you decided to take a job at the moped repair shop, and that feels like a really pivotal moment where hobby went to something that you were earning income on. Yeah. How did it feel to transition to earning money in something that was previously a hobby for the first time?
It was not a rational decision. I got a call over Christmas break, my first year in school, and Devin, who ran the moped shop, gave me a call, and he's like, "Hey, you're really into bikes. You want to work for me this summer?" And it would just be like casual repairing bikes. And I was like, sure. Yeah. If I was being very rational, I would have definitely been applying for architectural internships at that time, but I wasn't. And yeah, you're right. I think I hadn't really thought of it that way. That was pretty pivotal because that kind of set the trajectory. It made it a lot easier to do what I ended up doing. And I wasn't making a whole lot of money. We're talking a little small repair shop, just repairing vintage bikes. Yeah.
And you took that opportunity and you made so much more out of it than it began as. As I understand, it began as, let's do some repair. And then you took it in a lot of different directions. Tell us about that.
So yeah, certainly it started off as repair, but people would bring a bike in, or a lot of it was finding barn finds and restoring them, either just getting them running or doing a complete what we would call a resto mod, which means restoration and then sort of like hopping it up. And this very much was Devin's operation, the guy who ran the moped shop, who would become co-founder of Janus. And that gradually turned into more and more complex stuff. And I think one of the first things that I came in and did was we were highly modifying these bikes and say, I remember saying, Devin, what if we put a Motorbicane rear fender on this Puch, and we carved out this little bit right here. And I remember, I think that was kind of a pivotal moment where we were both like, we can mismatch parts. And then it turned from there to performance parts. And that sort of became customizing these bikes. And then eventually we got to a point where we had built ourselves some, I built one for myself, and then that kind of turned into this idea of, well, hey, we have all these local suppliers that are able to do these different processes for us, whether it's laser cutting or powder coating or welding. What if we built a moped? But what if we made one the way we want it to be? And this wasn't a business proposition, but it was production. We were going to build more than one, and we were going to build them for our friends, basically. And people would pitch in some money, and we would build these things. Well, we only built one, and that bike was very successful in terms of just the press we got from it and the courage it gave us to say, hey, we really do have the resources in Elkhart County, Indiana, to be able to make anything we want. And we got local people were like, you should start a motorcycle company. It was very important that we were where we were. This would not have worked in other places in the country. Elkhart County is the capital, I guess we could say, of the recreational vehicle industry. So 80%, if not more, of RVs are manufactured in Elkhart County. And that industry has created this ecosystem of these little tiny suppliers making parts for everything, from axles to suspension to bodywork to fenders to weld. I mean, any process you need, you can find within, and there's many of them within 10 miles.
Interesting. I didn't realize that this was really the epicenter of that production.
Yeah. We didn't either.
No kidding. So I want to go back to that first bike. It sounds like a lot of this was about curiosity, passion, play. How much, when you made that first bike, did you already have a customer who gave you money up front to pay for it? How logistically did you figure out kind of the finances and the sale of that first bike?
The idea was just that it would be something for our friends, and they would pitch in enough for the materials. We never ended up doing it. We ended up just building the bike, and it was just a way, very, I think you said, very playful kind of, let's just have fun and make this the way we want it, and not work on someone else's design and re-engineer it to be what we want. So we designed the chassis, the fuel tanks, the fender, the seat, basically built everything except for, the engine and wheels and stuff like that. But the idea I always go back to is it was a production. I've always been fascinated less in the custom kind of angle grinder and sparks, and more in the let's design it and then keep iterating. And so while we never built the 6 that we wanted to build, I think it's easy to see the kind of where we went with it.
Absolutely. And I've heard you refer to that period as this was an experiment. Mm-hmm. And I'm really curious about that word choice and what you mean by it. Was it purposely an experiment to prove something or answer a question for yourself?
I don't think so. I mean, yeah, maybe in that sense, like, can we build the bike that we want and the way that we want to build it? I do remember the thing in the back of my head, and this carries through to our first production Janus bike as well, it was just always in the back of my head, someday soon, I'm going to be riding down the road on the motorcycle that I made the way I want it. That was definitely what drove me. And I think about that to this day, like that desire, that kind of like the vision of what you wanted it to be like and what it would be like to experience it. Certainly didn't really have a specific customer in mind at that stage.
It sounds like you were the customer and then your immediate friends.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm picturing being there with you at the time. You have these bikes in your friends' hands and people are saying, you should make this a business. And I want to hear more about what were people saying and how did you interpret and internalize that and decide what to do with that feedback?
Well, this area is very entrepreneurial, extremely entrepreneurial. The RV industry, and maybe I don't want to give them all the credit, but the Middle West is, I see this place as really still an area that's like the newest in the country. 1830 is about the oldest anything happened out here. I mean, in a big sense. And so it is kind of like the frontier still, and people are still making their fortune and starting from scratch. People are like, oh, you should start a business doing this, because a lot of people do it. It happens all around us. I think it was fantastic. And that's why I've chosen to continue to live here. The wild Middle West, I call it.
Tell me about that decision that you made to make this a business.
So, yeah, we built the Paragon, which is the first bike we built. We got some blogs, back in the day, custom sites featured it. And that's when we thought, well, let's try and start a company doing this. It was very passion driven, kind of like that idea of someday I'm going to be riding this motorcycle that I designed. We were going to do a cafe racer, but instead of doing that, I got really distracted in architecture school, because studying classical architecture, the way that we do that is we look at precedents, and we base it off of a lot of classical architecture is looking to the past and finding a common language that meets people where they are, and it's designed around the human experience. And so I started looking at old bikes, and I started looking at the 30s, and I started looking at the 20s, and I realized that by the 1920s and 30s, it had kind of taken this form, and the form was kind of like perfect. And so the first bike we did was hard-tailed, which means it has no rear suspension. So going back to the 20s and 30s when that wasn't really a thing, and it had a very different look. A lot of people say our bikes look like from the 1920s, and that's certainly true. That was how we got started. The Halcyon 50 was the first bike, and we formally incorporated in December of what would become Janus Motorcycles, and we got a little bit of investment from a local group in the form of a loan, and we set about building our first prototype and picking an engine, and then it just kind of went from there.
And were you still in grad school at the time? Or was it something?
We had the idea for doing it in the late summer of the year I graduated, and then by December had formed the company.
Got it. And immediately full time.
Yeah. Yep. Although we weren't taking any paychecks at this point.
How did you meet those first local investors that gave you the loan?
Through local connections, just local entrepreneurs connected us. We have a entrepreneurial network here, and they made some connections.
I feel like so much of what you're saying is a testament to your local area being very entrepreneurial and having a strong entrepreneurial community.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So take me through those early days. What were the biggest surprises to you once you did start this business?
Just the whole idea of entrepreneurship. I came out of a literature degree in architecture. None of those have any classes in business. So learning what a Gantt chart was and how to use Excel and all this stuff was very foreign to us. And it probably was a big handicap as well. But I think we offset that with the passion for what we were doing and the drive to get this bike built.
One of the things I hear often from entrepreneurs who start a business around a very strong personal passion is the challenge of balancing your time between, hey, I got into this because I want to do the thing I love, but there's all this heap of other stuff that is not the stuff I love that's necessary to make that happen.
Well, you have to just face that.
Balancing that.
You just have to face it. I mean, there's no way around it. You've got to be, if you want to do the thing you want to do, you have to understand all the things that come along with it. I mean, the other side of it is you can partner with people that do have those skills. And that's something that's taken me a long time to learn. But yeah, you do have to be able to, you have to take care of all those accounting and marketing and sales and IT. All those things have to be done if you're going to running a business.
How far into your journey was it before you started to be able to delegate the things that you didn't love doing as much?
Too long. No, we started off as two people. So I handled sales, marketing, website, and design. And my business partner, Devin, handled our supplier relations, like supply chain, all the fabrication, getting the design actually made and building the bikes. And we were basically just one bike would fund the next one. And we were doing very, very limited runs, 20 a year max, 25.
And you mentioned you didn't pay yourself in the beginning. How did you manage that financially?
Well, my business partner still ran his moped business, so he could live off that. And I have a very dedicated wife who, at that point, was waiting tables, paying the bills. So it was a team effort.
Number one thing I hear from every entrepreneur I talk to is married, is supportive spouse.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know that at some point you grew through a Kickstarter campaign. Talk to me about your choice to use crowdfunding.
Yeah, that was after a couple of years we did that. We got to a point where we thought, if we want to make this into a production company, we're going to have to get EPA certification. All the red tape has to be covered, and we got to get serious about this. During this time, it wasn't paying the bills enough, and so I moved back to Virginia for about a year and a half and took a job in architecture and enjoyed that process. I was still doing all the sales and marketing on the side, and making trips out to Goshen regularly. But at a certain point, we got a guy who was just really interested in what we were doing, and he was a videographer, and he started doing video and photos for us and helping me out a lot in the marketing. I thought, okay, this is really powerful. And my business partner was saying, if we're going to make this happen, you got to be out here. And so I ended up quitting my job and moving back here with my family. At that point, no real plan in terms of income, because I still wasn't taking any paycheck from Janus. But we hired our first employee who helped with assembly and supply chain. And we had these two other guys, Grant and Jordan, to help with marketing. And we just said, we're going to make this happen. And we're going to start off with a small paycheck, and we're going to grow this. And one way we're going to do this is we're going to try a crowdfunding campaign. And on Kickstarter, which is what we used, you can't market, or you couldn't at the time market highway vehicles. Devin and I, another just kind of side passion was making luggage. Most of our supply chain at that time was Amish. So our area is a lot of Amish people working in the RV industry. And we had a leather harness maker, and he was making saddlebags for us. And so we thought, well, let's just make bags. And we had designed all these backpacks and messenger bags and all this stuff. And so we built the campaign around that. But the funds were to go for raising the funds to be able to go to start EPA testing. It was very successful. We went past our goal, but the goal was still very small. But the beauty of it was that it got us exposure, and that was fantastic. And so then we met some local investors, local entrepreneurs that said, hey, this is really cool. We want to be part of this. And they helped us to get through EPA and start the company up.
It sounds like in that story, one of the really big pivot points for you was having the videographer come on board. Help me understand, why was that so pivotal?
Well, because we're trying to sell direct, YouTube and Instagram and Facebook, we've always known that those are keys to what we do. We knew that we needed to be able to tell people about what we were doing. I mean, the traditional model for motorcycle sales is dealerships. People walk in, they test ride the bike, they look at it, they kick the tires, and then they have a dealer that talks to them and sells them on the bike. Having a videographer who could give someone an experience of what the bike was like in more than just photographic means was really important. And even just photographing it well.
It sounds like at that point, the business started to feel different to you in its potential once you started to see the results from that videographer. Is that right?
Yeah. That moment when I thought, I'm willing to quit a job and with no real promise of a paycheck and go all in on this, move halfway across the country with a family, that was pretty pivotal.
That conviction was from seeing that marketing, that novel marketing out in the world.
Yeah, just seeing the fact that there were more people that were interested and then we could build a team.
Okay. So the building of the team was one of the really big proof points.
Yeah.
You can get people into this mission with you.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, we've been doing this for 3 or 4 years, and it was happening, but it was totally a side hustle.
And to go back to the crowdfunding point, it was so interesting to me reading the comments on your YouTube videos. Was such an interesting proof point of the passion of the community. I'm sure you've seen these comments, but Janus Motorcycles is poetry in motion. The most fun on 2 wheels, hands down, is on a Janus. It was incredible to read.
Yeah, those are the positive ones. And then we get negative ones as well. I mean, they're catalysts for all kinds of emotions. They get people riled up.
Passion happens on both sides, right? People are excited, positive and negative. And it sounds like it's that passion that made it possible to crowdfund, and then is what precipitated another investor seeing that attention and coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. our owners, people that had bought the first couple of bikes, are still some of our top supporters. And we have a very, very, very passionate owner base and community.
Am I correct that one of your customers now works at the business?
That's right. Yeah. Our COO is started off as a customer.
What a cool story.
Yeah.
Now, that's the beginning of your story. There's so much ahead for you. I saw that you're crowdfunding again, doing an equity raise with a stated goal of $300 million in annual revenue by 2030. Tell me about those future plans.
Yeah, so we were successful in getting EPA certification for our first model line, which basically we took the 50cc and scaled it up. And then we launched some additional models. And then over the last couple of years, the business has changed a lot in the sense that we've had to really focus on dialing in the business aspect of it to be a profitable business. It's very, very challenging to be in the power sports industry is very, very difficult. Automotive industry is very, very difficult. And if you come at it with the way we do, with a very small scale, do it all yourself approach, it's challenging. You just mentioned a customer who's become an employee, Mark Zweig. He started off as a customer, and then we started asking him questions, and then he came on as an advisor, and then it's kind of CFO and moved on from there. But he has really helped us in that dialing in of the business, assembling a board of directors, shifting our incorporation from a LLC to a Inc. Just a lot of the things that we did not have in our back pocket experience. Culmination of that has been that we've decided that we wanted to try and do this equity raise through a crowdfunding platform, in addition to additional equity raises we've made over the last couple of years that have been very successful. It's really serving two things. One is it's a way for our owners to participate in the company and also to raise funds for our expansion. But I think that one of the most exciting things about this whole WeFunder campaign is that most of the investment is coming from Janus Motorcycles customers. And that's just been incredibly exciting and rewarding to see.
What an exciting thing to do with such a passionate community, to make them part of your success in more ways through crowdfunding. That was Richard Worsham talking about his journey building Janus Motorcycles. The biggest theme that I hear in Richard's story is community. He had a passion for riding, so he joined the moped community in Elkhart, Indiana. And it was by joining that community that he got his first job in the industry. He learned what other riders liked and were looking for. He met his co-founder, and he met his first customers. That's a real case study in joining your passion-based community. He was also an active part of the local Elkhart community more broadly. By engaging there, he met people who would be his vendors and his investors. He built those relationships over time. People knew him, trusted him, and wanted to help him succeed. Now, that's a case study in joining your place-based community. Lastly, he deeply invested in the rider community that was buying his bikes. He really listened and reacted to their feedback. He put out direct content for them. He evolved bike designs to meet their needs. And in a very honest and authentic way, he is one of them. That community has been key to making organic marketing possible and fundraising through crowdfunding, a final case study in building customer communities. This is Dana Moriello, and I can't wait to see you next week on This Is a Thing.